Why your manifestation keeps failing, even when you do everything right. Most people, after learning manifestation, start asking the same question. If techniques are not the problem, then what is actually blocking results? They try affirmations. They visualize. They do SATs. They try living in the end. And still, nothing really changes. So they assume they are doing something wrong. But the real issue is not effort. The real issue is something much more subtle. You are not stuck because you are missing a technique. You are stuck because you are repeatedly entering the wrong state without noticing it. And one of the biggest states that keeps people stuck is something almost nobody talks about clearly: the waiting state. Let's slow this down. After someone learns manifestation, something important happens. They get excited. They start practicing. They imagine their desire. They feel a shift. For a moment, it feels real. But then they return to their normal day. And here is where everything changes. Because instead of continuing to live from that state, they start waiting to see it in reality. Waiting for movement. Waiting for signs. Waiting for confirmation. Waiting for proof. And they don't realize something very important. Waiting is not neutral. Waiting is a state. And the state of waiting is actually the state of lack. Because when you are waiting, you are internally confirming one thing. It is not here yet. And that becomes your identity again. So the cycle looks like this. You learn a technique. You apply it. You feel something shift. Then you return to your normal awareness. And almost immediately, your attention goes outward. Has it changed yet? Is something happening? When will it arrive? What about now? And every one of those questions seems harmless. But each question is actually reinforcing the same identity. The identity of someone who is still waiting. And this is why nothing stabilizes. Because you are not living in a new state long enough for it to become dominant. You are only visiting it briefly. Then returning to the old one. Now here is the part most people miss completely. They think manifestation is about doing techniques correctly. But manifestation is actually about what you are being when you are not doing anything. Not during affirmations. Not during visualization. But in between. In your normal thinking. In your default awareness. In your quiet moments. That is where identity is revealed. And that is where manifestation is actually happening. So let's define this clearly. If you are thinking, I hope this works. I wonder if it's coming. I need to check. I need to make sure. I need to see progress. Then you are not in creation. You are in waiting. And waiting is just another way of affirming absence. Even if you are doing all the techniques correctly. Even if you are visualizing every day. Even if you are saying the right words. If your default inner feeling is waiting, then your identity has not changed. And manifestation follows identity. Not effort. Not repetition. Identity. Now this is where people get confused. They hear, change identity, and think it means forcing yourself to act different. Or pretending. Or repeating affirmations harder. But identity is not something you force. Identity is something you return to automatically. And right now, most people are automatically returning to one thing. The state of waiting. So what is the shift? The shift is not to try harder. The shift is to notice the moment you leave the state. Because you will. You will think about your desire. You will check reality. You will wonder when it will happen. That is normal. But the difference is awareness. The moment you notice you are waiting, you are already outside the loop. And that is the opening. Because now you can ask a different question. Not, where is it? But instead, what would I be focused on if this was already normal for me? Not as imagination. As direction. As identity correction. This is what thinking from the state actually means. It is not forcing belief. It is not pretending. It is simply stopping the loop of waiting long enough to return to a different inner position. Even if only for a moment. And that moment matters. Because identity is built through repetition of return. Not perfection. Not intensity. But return. So every time you catch yourself waiting, you are actually seeing the old identity in action. Not a failure. Not a mistake. Just awareness. And in that awareness, you have a choice. To continue waiting? Or to return. Not forcefully. Not emotionally. Just mentally shifting back into assumption. And over time, something changes. Not instantly. Not dramatically. But quietly. The waiting becomes less. the checking becomes less. The emotional dependence becomes less. And your inner state becomes more stable. And when your state becomes stable, your outer reality begins to reflect it. Because reality is always responding. But it responds to what you consistently are, not what you occasionally do. So the real reason your manifestation keeps failing is not because you are doing it wrong. It is because you keep leaving the state that would make it real. You enter it for moments, then return to waiting. And waiting always recreates lack. Every single time. And once you see this clearly, you stop obsessing over techniques. You stop searching for the perfect method. And you start paying attention to something much more important. Where am I living from right now? Because that is the only place reality ever responds to.